When it comes to Magic the Gathering, everyone's got their own reasons to play, and something that keeps them emotionally and financially invested in the game. Whether that's sitting down with a playgroup, catching up with some friends, going to GPs and larger events trying to spike it, or heading to F&Ms and rules lawyering the person who's been playing for exactly 2 weeks just so they can earn an extra pack at the end of the night. Yeah, some people are dicks. Whatever your reason, your deck choice is something that takes time and not only is a huge investment more often than not, but it's something that can be used as self-expression. For many players, stock lists don't do it for you. Brewing new ideas and trying to find that next broken deck is really what drives you. If that sounds like something that you're into, and you're looking for a few tips or tricks to hone your deck crafting skill set, welcome to the Brewski. On this episode, we're going to touch on the topic of the 4 of, how many copies of each effect you should probably be putting in your deck, the chances you have of drawing what you need, and how to best curve the probabilities in your favor for whatever your deck's trying to do. This is where the video and your deck idea really get interesting, because let's face it, all the way up to this point this video has been a long-winded bunch of nothing. You're welcome. So, how many copies of these critical cards should you put in your deck? Well, to start off, let's look at what a certain number of copies means you're looking for throughout the course of a game, and, probably the more important part, what your chances of seeing that card in your opening 7 all the way up through turn 3 actually are. And I'm going to let you guys know, the math that I've done for this is with no card selection. There's not going to be any filtering or draw of any kind. The math that I'm showing you is just the probability based solely on you naturally drawing the card. We can get into the cantrip math a little bit later on. First things first, the 1 of. The odds of drawing a 1 of in your deck, or a singleton, in your opening 7 is roughly 12% of the time, and you're only going to see it 15% of your games by turn 3, which is turn 2 on the draw. Now, what would be the reason for only running 1 copy of an effect? This is often the result of a spell being a tutor target, or being the sole win condition for a list that sees its entire deck on the turn it's trying to win. This means that the effect isn't really all that helpful when you draw it naturally, and you really only want to see it at the exact moment it's right. A list that runs this type of strategy would be Ad Nauseam in Modern, where it only runs a single copy of Lightning Storm, or Emrakul the Promised End in Pioneer Sultai Delirium. These 1-ofs are often tutored up, like with Traverse the Uvenrald in Pioneer's case, or for Ad Nauseam, during the winning turn that pilot is going to see the entire deck. So running 1 copy of an effect means you realistically won't even see that card if drawn all that often, so it shouldn't be something you should expect to see very often early on, which might be the exact role you're trying to fill with that 1 of. If a singleton copy isn't what you're looking for with the reasons I gave you above, maybe you're trying to bump it up to 2. So the 2 of, which is where you've allocated 2 slots for a single spell, you can expect to see this card in your opening hand about 22% of the time. And then after that, by turn 3 or turn 2 on the draw, you'll see it about 1 out of every 4 games. And generally this means the spell is something that you don't want early on. It isn't a card that's a linchpin for your deck, and is playing second fiddle to some of the other effects in your deck that may do something similar. The 2 of is often very resource intensive, whether that's mana or anything else, or it's a dead draw if you see more than 1 copy during a game. A solid example of this would be Kroxa, Titan of Death's Hunger in the recent Jund list. Although it's a very powerful card, and that escape mechanic provides a solid dose of inevitability for the deck, exiling 5 cards from your graveyard and casting it for black, black, red, red isn't only mana intensive, but it also detracts from the strength of Goyf, which is well known for being the finisher of choice for most Jund lists. So, with those resources it requires, the minor anti-synergies with Tarmogoyf, and the fact that it's legendary, makes 2 copies about the right number. On to the 3 of. Now that we're moving up the ladder a little bit to cards that you're looking to utilize the strengths of frequently, if not every game, 3 copies of a spell means you're going to have it in your opener just under a third of the time, and you can expect to draw it naturally in 40% of the games you play by turn 3, or again, this is turn 2 if you're on the draw. The 3 of is likely important to your game plan, but not something that you're looking for early on in the game, or even at multiples at any point. Often a 3 of is the correct number if it's resource intensive, if it's an answer for specific situations, or for legendary creatures that aren't critical for your game plan to function. For example, Thalia, Guardian of Thraven, Modern Humans. Although Thalia's taxing effects is a very strong game plan against a lot of decks in Modern, the fact that it's legendary is a big drawback, and oftentimes it's outclassed against other creature-heavy decks. Having 3 copies means you'll see it frequently enough in matchups where you want it, and infrequently enough where you often won't be stuck with multiple copies in your hand in matchups where it's nothing more than a roadblock against bigger bodies. Alright, now it's time for some in-video small print. I want to let you guys know that these are helpful tips for thinking about how many copies you want in your deck, but again, there are other factors that play into this, such as whether or not you have any card draw, and if you do, this changes the probability slightly, but often if you have a decent number of cantrips, anywhere between 6 and 8, you can cut down on the number of copies as you will run into 3 ofs just about as often as if you had 4 copies with no cantrips, so that's something to ponder as well. Lastly, the one we've all been waiting for and why I named this episode of the Brewski the 4 of. The justification or the tough love you need as to why you should or shouldn't run a full playset of your pet card in a deck that you want to be competitive. Before I get to the numbers on running 4 copies, I think you guys need to know that it's really important to know what you're saying by putting 4 copies of a spell in a deck. A 4 of means that you're trying to draw this card as frequently and as early as possible. Without this card, your deck might not function optimally, or it might not even function at all. A quick example of this might be Amulet Titan decks in Modern. Now these are anemic piles of garbage without drawing one of their namesake Titans early on, and often drawing multiples of these is a plus because it's a prime candidate for removal, and the more saturated the deck is with that effect, the better the deck's going to perform. On to the numbers. Let's start digging into the math of 4 ofs a bit to show you exactly how often you can stand up in frustration and throw your deck at the wall because math broke during your match. Let's assume you're on the play and run 4 copies of an effect in your deck. Remember, a 4 of is something that you have decided you want to see early and often. Now, being that your deck likely needs this to function, what are the numbers around the chances of that happening? Well, with 4 copies of a particular effect in a 60 card list, there's a 40% chance of seeing 1 copy in your opening 7, and about a 50% chance to see 1 copy by turn 3. Now, that's going to be turn 2 if you're on the draw. Working back with my previous example of Amulet Titan, flipping a coin for those pilots who spent all that money investing into the deck, that's not what they're looking for. Think about it, they're not even guaranteed to win if they see a Titan, being that the format is so removal heavy, but they're pretty much guaranteed to lose if that huge idiot never shows up. This is why deck builders moved up to a virtual 8 copies by adding 4 Summoners Pact. And again, I know they run Talaria or West, but I'm excluding that because it takes that initial investment of 3 mana to go grab the Pact. So, with those extra 4 copies, now having a virtual 8 in the deck, Amulet Titan players actually increase their percentages to 65% of having a Titan or a Summoners Pact in their opening 7, and just over 70% by turn 3 or turn 2 if they're on the draw. This is why the deck works. Without the consistency that's brought to the deck by these values, the deck wouldn't be anywhere near as successful as popular as it currently is. Think about this for your deck. Is there a card that you need to see to be able to win? If so, a 4 probably won't give you what you're looking for when it comes to consistency. If it's truly a critical piece for your combo or synergy to make the deck tick, scour the legal sets in your format to see if there's any more copies of an effect that's similar to it that can slide in alongside. Here's a couple examples. If you're building a Knight of the Reliquary deck with land tutor targets, consider throwing in a few Elvish Reclaimers, just for that extra bit of consistency. Even though it's more expensive and it's worse, having an extra couple abilities that do the same thing as Knight is going to be a positive for you, make your deck more consistent. Do you like Graveyard synergies with Lazav the Multifarious? Try throwing in a few Necrotic Oozes to up your ability to maximize how often you can take advantage of the creatures in your bin. Okay, enough speculating. Does this mean that you can't build that cool synergistic deck with a pet card that has a unique effect with no other options? Of course it doesn't. That's why Magic is so fun. You can try to create the next cool thing or something that you've been wanting to do for a long time because you thought of it. You can always look for supplementary cards that help you filter like cantrips or card selection spells to be able to find it more consistently. So, this is going to bring us to the end of the first episode of the Brewski. Let me know, did you find any of this information helpful? Did it answer any questions that have bugged you for a long time when building or honing your deck list? Would you like a more in-depth breakdown of the numbers? Just let me know in the comments and please like and subscribe. Man, I'm a YouTuber now, that's what I say. Please smash that bell, like, subscribe, all that stuff. But either way, this was a Chump Block, and you're free to sling spells another turn.